Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt inside of Studio West. I have mixed feelings about my next guest. Rob Bluey is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Signal, and I've known him since before he was shaving. So now that he's middle-aged, what's that make me? I don't know. Bluey, welcome. It's great to have you on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hugh, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me today.
Well, I want to catch people up on your career. You came to D.C., in 2005, 6, something like that, and then you went to Heritage in 2007. I used to broadcast from Heritage when I didn't have a studio in D.C., and you would always meet me. So have you been at Heritage since 2007?
I have. I actually came to D.C. in '01. I spent a few years reporting on Capitol Hill and doing other political coverage for CNS News when it existed at the Media Research Center, and then Human Events. And it was when we started the bloggers briefing, when bloggers were all the rage in the mid-2000s, that I found my place at Heritage. And then, about 7 years after that, we started the Daily Signal in 2014, and I've been focused on that largely ever since.
You know, you invited me to the first bloggers lunch. I don't know if you remember that. I think the Powerline guys were there and a few other. And then you never invited me back. I don't know what I did. Did I spill soup or something? Did I have bad manners? I got one invite to the bloggers lunch and I was out.
I'm sorry. Well, that was an error on my part. You were not deliberately excluded by any means, but the bloggers were the social media influencers before before they existed. And I think back, if only I had known that growing my following to 1 million on Instagram or Twitter would get me all of the riches, then I would have spent a lot more time doing that.
Well, I think people should follow Rob on X at Rob Bluey. They ought to follow the Daily Signal. They ought to visit it. Heritage has really embraced the new media. Rob, my construct is there's legacy media, there's old new media, which is talk radio and Fox News Channel, and the bloggers were a part of old new media, and now there's new media, which is a million different things, including podcasting. Have you taken the nosedive into podcasting yet?
We are. I mean, at the Daily Signal, we've always felt, I mean, we're very blessed that Heritage has given us this opportunity and the resources to have a nonprofit news organization. And so as part of that, Hugh, I mean, we are mission driven. I mean, we don't hide the fact that we are conservative, and we're also platform agnostic. So whether you're consuming information on a social media platform, through a podcast, on a video, or reading or doing the old-fashioned thing of reading and subscribing to an email newsletter, we offer it all, and that's really our goal. Is we want to make sure that we have a better educated, more informed public about the policy debates that are happening in Congress, the White House, and all across the state capitals in this country.
You know, Rob, I've seen some clips of you showing up on CNN and a few other places, and I've always said there are two kinds of Republicans and conservatives who show up on legacy media: refugees and missionaries. And I was a missionary forever, but I'm done with that. I'm too old for that nonsense now. Now you're one of the missionaries. How do you like it? When I see you on CNN and around surrounded by these left-wing lunatics, I think, oh, good, you're the right age for that nonsense. What do you think of it?
Well, you're absolutely right. You're outnumbered because very few people, hold those conservative values or beliefs. I think a conversation we were having this morning on CNN is a testament to this. They were talking about the Snow White movie, which Disney has produced and will be in theaters next Friday. And they were. I made the point that it was an example of DEI, Disney doing DEI again, and the panel just looked at me confused. and I think that this is so important for their audiences to understand that there's half of the country that sees how these major corporations or others, are embracing these woke ideologies, and they generally don't think about it in the same terms that we do as conservatives. So, I mean, yes, I guess I would consider myself a missionary, and I'm trying to at least bring a different perspective to these discussions that they might not otherwise hear.
Well, get your Kevlar if you go over to MSNBC. CNN remains somewhat respectful of center-right to conservative views, but I don't know about CNN. Rob, on Fridays, I like to go through news of the week. So I want to start with Mohammed Khalil. I haven't got a ruling yet today. He should be out of the country already under 8 U.S.C. 1227. There isn't a right of repeal. It's a non-justiciable call by the Secretary of State. What do you think is going to happen there?
I do think ultimately he will be deported and removed. I think that the Trump administration is standing on some fairly solid ground. And by the way, Hugh, I'm basing my opinion on the legal experts at the Heritage Foundation and others whose analysis of the situation I trust deeply. And the reason why I do is because you have a situation here where the United States has broad leverage to remove individuals like this who are clearly supporting terrorism and working against the United States. And so I have no idea how a judge might rule. I mean, remember, we have seen all sorts of rulings early on these days of the Trump administration that clearly the president probably does not like. And so I don't know if this is one of those cases that'll make it all the way to the Supreme Court, but certainly the legal
Stand by,
legal
Rob.
lines will
We're gonna go to a break and come right back to you and talk to you during the break, and then come back on the network. Rob Bluey at the Daily Signal. Follow him on X at Rob Bluey. Follow Daily Signal on X as well. Follow me to the next segment on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back. I've got Rob Bluey with me. Earlier today, Rob, I posted a long excerpt over at X from Justice Jackson's opinion in the 1952 case of Horace Ladies versus Shaughnessy, where a couple of communists got thrown out of the country. They were LPRs, green card holders, but you couldn't be a communist. And so everyone's saying this is the McCarthy era. That's just so stupid. It's not. It's a power inherent in the federal government to expel aliens who are dangerous to our foreign policy. Is that the conclusion of the heritage experts?
Yeah, that's similar to what I've read from those who work in the Mies Center, the legal center at the Heritage Foundation. I mean, I think there's a couple issues here. One is just a common sense issue. I think most people would look at this situation and they'd say, why would we want an individual who's engaging in these types of tactics and rhetoric? And if there is a means for deporting them, let's do it. And then there's the legal question, which you're raising. And I do think, based on the analysis you shared and what I've read elsewhere, that there's a good chance that a judge rules in favor of the Trump administration's move here. And remember, Donald Trump has said that he's not going to end here with this particular individual. This will continue. And so I think that it's important to have clarity.
And I want people to realize that the Justice Jackson opinion, his clerk was a guy named Rehnquist, and Rehnquist's clerk was a guy named Roberts. And if a question of national security and deportation gets up to the Supreme Court, the Roberts, Rehnquist, Jackson trio kicks back in. And I'm pretty confident about this. The executive cannot be obliged to be second-guessed in a matter of national security by a judge, no matter how much they think of themselves. Let me ask you, Rob, why are Democrats throwing in with Khalil to begin with? This is not really the demo you want if you're going to try and rebuild your party.
It's not. I mean, I've heard some try to make the case about free speech. I think it's very interesting that they've used that particular line of argument. But you're absolutely right, Hugh. This seems like one of those issues where people are getting very worked up over somebody who is engaging in the type of rhetoric that doesn't really necessarily have a place in this country. And you might have differences of opinion about the Palestinian Israel situation, but to have somebody who's openly embraced some of the tactics with Hamas, which is a designated terrorist group of the United States, is a totally different question.
Right, I want to underscore, I have no idea why Secretary Rubio made the determination that Mr. Khalil is a threat to our foreign policy. Nobody does. The key to the law is the Secretary of State doesn't have to say so, and it's unreviewable. Now, Mr. Khalil has due process rights. We got to make sure that we've detained the right person and that he's an LPR, not an American citizen, because American citizens have better and more perfect rights. But I do not know why Democrats have decided this is the hill they want to stand on. Stand by. I'm coming back with Rob Bluey. We're going to talk about shutdown idiocy and whether or not the Schumer shutdown is going to happen, and Vladimir Putin and Ukraine, and lots more. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with Rob Bluey. Welcome back, America. I'm really kind of happy that Rob Bluey is joining me. Every Friday, I try and bring in people like Rob or Ben Domenech or Charlie Cook or really smart conservatives like Matt Continetti and the rest of these other three guys to review the news in the week. And Rob is going to add to our rotation there, and I'm so appreciative of that. Rob, we don't have a final vote on the CR yet as we're talking. This will also go on the podcast tomorrow, but we're broadcasting right now live across the country. So it looks like the Democrats are going to cave and go for the CR. Is that your understanding, so that the government remains open?
I think ultimately that's what they will do. I mean, obviously, Chuck Schumer coming out and declaring his support, I think, sends a signal to at least 8 to 10 other Democrats that they should come along. And I think you probably look at those 3 Democrats who have said that they're going to retire. Obviously, there's not a lot, at stake for them in the next election, or nothing at stake for them. And then a few others who come from some swing states who don't necessarily want this hanging over their head. But there will be a significant faction of the Democratic Party, just as there were all but one in the U.S. House, who will vote to basically not fund the government and move forward for a shutdown. They need the 60 votes. We know that Rand Paul is not going to vote with Republicans on this one. He is a no. And so that gets them to 8 that they need among the Democrats.
Now, This is the Biden Regency budget. I no longer call it the Biden presidency because we now know we actually have no idea who was running the government. It was a Regency. So during the Biden Regency, they came up with this budget and they passed it for 6 months. And it's a continuation of that budget with some reprioritization. I would vote for it in order to give us time to get to one big, beautiful bill. Has Heritage taken a position on the CR?
Yes, Kevin Roberts and at Heritage Action and Heritage Action Executive Vice President Ryan Walker have both come out and endorsed the continuing resolution, and this is consistent with I think what you've seen from the Freedom Caucus and other conservatives. Nobody really likes a continuing resolution, as I think you're hinting at here, particularly one that was crafted during the Biden era. But there are more important things that we need to get focused on, including budget reconciliation.
Now let's get focused on budget reconciliation. I am an agnostic on one big beautiful bill or two big beautiful bills or three big beautiful bills, but the House has passed one big beautiful bill that extends the tax cuts for 5 years. That seems to me to be the minimum necessary to get liftoff on the economy. What do you think about it, Rob? Should we
Yes.
just go with the House bill, stamp it, move it, and come back for round two?
I think so, absolutely. Remember, one of the key factors here is what the Senate parliamentarian is going to allow in the budget reconciliation bill. So there's one line of thinking is that you take the House bill, but you actually start it in the Senate, so you have the framework. You don't have a situation where the House passes something. Remember, this a narrow margin in the House. It goes over to the Senate, and the parliamentarian rules that certain aspects of the bill can't be passed under reconciliation. And so whatever you do need to do, I think you need to get this done in the first half of the year. You have to get it done in the second quarter. Otherwise, you're not going to realize all of the benefits from those tax cuts and the extensions that you're talking about, Hugh. And this was the problem in 2017. They waited until December to get it done, and then it took a long time for us to really see the effect of it in the market. And the American people are hurting right now. They want to see action. They want to see costs lower. We had an encouraging inflation report this week, but they need to see more.
Now, there's an attempt by legacy media and Democrats to paint the market up and down, and it's been mostly down for the first 2 months, as a verdict on the Trump presidency. That's idiocy, of course. It's idiocy to say anything is a verdict on anything. But we have a lot of TDS out there, some of which people have never overcome in legacy media. Then we have a lot of TDS relapse among center-right conservatives who got over their TDS, realized that Trump's second term would be much, much better than the Biden Regency or a Kamala Harris presidency, but they're relapsing, Rob. It's like they can't wait 6 months to see what happens. They want to declare that Trump has failed. Have you noticed this?
They absolutely do. I mean, I think that there is a segment that will always think that way. I don't know if there's anything that he could possibly do. I mean, he could achieve peace in the Middle East and Europe and have a roaring economy, and they would still point the finger at Trump and want to blame him for things. So there is just this genuine hatred for him, sadly, that exists with some people. But, there's new polling out today from Scott Rasmussen at the Neapolitan News Service that has his approval rating up to 54%. That's the highest in Scott's poll since inauguration day. So I think that there's still a large segment of the American people who like what Trump is doing. They think that somebody's finally gone to Washington to clean up some of the mess. You and I were engaged in some of these fights over earmarks and spending, going back almost 20 years. And finally,
at least 20 years. I hate to tell you how long we've been doing this.
I know.
Rob,
so
let me ask you about Putin and Ukraine. I am a big supporter of a free Ukraine. I'm also a realist in the Nixon School of Realism. I also know we have no idea what's going on because I don't have a security clearance and neither do you. But I sure don't want to condemn anything that's happened yet as a failure or a capitulation to Putin or an abandonment of Zelensky. We just don't know. Why is it that people in our business can't admit we don't know and we won't know what the situation is for 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, we're not going to know. I mean, I think that's the reality, and this is a very fragile negotiation. Let's face it. We saw with the blow up in the Oval Office. We've seen Trump try to bring the parties back together, and Marco Rubio traveling overseas. And so I think we need to pray that there is peace and reconciliation in that part of the world. It's really critical for us to move forward and not continue this war. Many people think back to 2022 as the start of this, but actually you have to go all all the way back, I think, to 2014 when Russia started the incursions on Ukraine. And so this is over a decade of war, one of the, a ground war that's taken the lives of so many people. And if Trump could bring it to an end, I really do think he deserves great recognition and maybe even the Nobel Prize for it.
Well, he'll never get the Nobel Prize because it's the Nobel Prize, but we can award it to if it's a good, stable peace with acceptable, and if they get the kids back. We know Putin is a war criminal. We know he's killed civilians. He's targeted civilians. We know he's kidnapped children. He's a horrible human being. That doesn't mean you can't do a deal with him. Nixon sat down with Mao, who's the greatest murderer of the 20th century. Does everyone forget that?
Well, and Hugh, I think this is the key because everything you said about Putin, I agree with. The question is whether or not if you come to an agreement, will he honor the terms of that deal? Because this has been the problem in the past. And I think that there's skepticism, particularly among the Europeans, about whether that's the case. And I certainly know among the Ukrainians that's the case. And so for those who are in that part of the world, I think that there will need to be, and this is why that mineral rights deal I think was so critical, because it gave the U.S. a stake in Ukraine.
And the fact that President Trump stepped up sanctions in a way that the Biden Regency never did. He's done that, and he's been tougher on Putin in the first 2 months than the Biden Regency was in 4 years. Rob Bluey, great to see you again. Look forward to having you back. Follow him on X at Rob Bluey. Follow the Daily Signal. Go there and consume great content every single day. Thank you, Rob. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned.